Hey, welcome to the most wonderful real estate podcast ever. Okay, so I want to wrap up this today to tie into the last 4 shows, last 5, where we talked about is the housing market about to break again. The housing market about to break again. Now, what I did is if you just listen back over the last 4 or 5 shows, we've been talking about the difference in the interest rates. And I told you I needed to take a second so I could figure up the interest rate on a 30-year loan. So a $200,000 loan at 3% interest, which is what we've had for a while. Over the course of 30 years, you borrow $200,000, you pay back a total of $303,554. So the bank makes basically $103,000 off of the $200,000 over 30 years at just 3% interest. Now, when you take the same $200,000 and you go to 6% interest, and 6% interest over 40 years, you borrow $200,000, but you actually pay back over that entire time, you actually pay back $528,210. So the bank makes $328,000 on you. So I stopped for a second so I could figure it up over 30 years. Now, this is really interesting. So if you take the same $200,000 and you say, hey, I'm only going to borrow it for 30 years, not 40, I'm going to do it for 30. Your payment's only basically $1,200. So borrowing $200,000 at 6% over 40 years, your payment's $1,100, and borrowing $200,000 for 30 years, 10 years less, at 6% interest makes your payment around $1,200. That's like off by a few cents. So when you pay the bank back, the total amount that you pay back is you pay back $231,677. So at 6% over 40 years, you pay back the $200,000 that you borrowed, an additional $328,000 in interest. And when you borrow the $200,000, you pay back the $200,000 plus $231,000 additional for going 6% for 30 years. So I just want you to look at the difference. $100 a month. $100 a month makes the difference of almost $100,000. It makes such a difference. It's so shocking what a difference it makes. But here's what people do. They go, oh, I can have a payment of $1,100 over 40 years, or I can have a payment of $1,200 over 30 years. But if I pay $1,100 to the bank instead of $1,200, then that extra money can pay my water or my TV services or my phone or my electric or something else. So people always take the cheaper payment. Now, here's the thing. If you do it over 40 years, you pay back $328,000. If you do it over 30 years, you pay back $231,000. So the difference is like about $100,000. But 90% of the people that buy a house, I know when I bought my first house, I never even looked at how much I was going to pay back to the bank. The only thing I looked at was how much is the monthly mortgage payment. And I know with everybody, when you buy a house, the only thing that you look at is how much is the actual mortgage payment per month. No, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't know enough. I didn't know enough to look at, like, if I amortize the whole thing out, what is the entire amount that I'm going to pay back? I never had an idea that if you borrow $100,000, you pay back $300. It's like, if you think of it that way, you're like, holy cow, I'm paying the bank so much money for the ability to borrow money. Like, it's really staggering. And when you look at the difference, I just did it. I had to have bills. Like, can you just do this with me right here? This doesn't seem right. So the difference of the 30-year mortgage at 6% interest versus the 40-year mortgage at 6% interest, the mortgage payment is only $100 difference, but you pay back almost $100,000 extra dollars. It's like, $100 should not make that much difference, but it really does. And it makes that much difference in the minds of the people that are borrowing, because the bank has a ratio. You can earn this much money, your mortgage payment can be this much money, and then your car payment, your interest, and your insurance, and electric phone debt can be this much money, your entertainment can be this much money, and they use a formula, and you really have to fall within that formula, or if you don't, you may have to pay a higher interest rate. So knowing how the average person thinks, it makes perfect sense why the housing market is going to break again, because in 2008, everybody had interest-only loans, and it was interest-only. So people could buy a $200,000 house for like $700 a month, because it was just the interest. It wasn't the principal. The principal is the amount that you borrow. You pay that down. So you pay the interest, and you pay the principal, and you pay it down simultaneously. And so when people were paying interest only, their payments, when it was time to pay principal, interest, and of course you have to pay taxes and insurance, but it's time to pay all of it, some people's payment even tripled. And they were like, holy cow. And they couldn't afford to make the payments. And like they tried to refinance or put their house on the market, which caused massive amounts of houses to go on the market all at the exact same time. And then when that happened, we had the giant. And so now we've been lucky the last few years. The prices have been going up. The interest rates have been low. Everything was going along fine. And then now groceries are up. Gas is up. Interest rates have doubled, even going higher. I saw a commercial yesterday for 6.7%. I was like, dang, 6.7%. Like literally, it's just 6% a few days ago. So just in the last day or two, they've already are doing commercials for 6.7% interest. So I don't know how high it'll go. It'll go as high enough to where people literally stop borrowing. Like there'll come a point, I don't know if any of you guys remember, like back in, I'm going to say it was the 80s, the interest rates were like 17, 18% on a house. And so I look back at that and I was like, holy cow, who could afford to buy a house? Like, who could afford to buy a house back then? It's probably why I rented apartments in the 80s. I didn't buy my first house till I was 30. And that would have been like 1990. Like, really right before I started investing, I bought my first house, which, you know, with all the crazy of my divorce and being a single mom and blah, 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 I ended up losing it anyway. So that's probably why I didn't buy anything in my 20s, because the interest rate was so high. So we have all gotten spoiled by this low interest rate of having 2.2 and 3% really low interest rates for a long time. But those days are now gone. I hate to say, they are actually gone. And the banks are really pushing the 40-year loans, and the interest rate is about 6% right now. Now, you know what? By the time we do this series for July and August, it is very possible that the interest rates could even be higher than that. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see where they settle. But they are going up more and more and more, literally, by the day. Now, if you're enjoying my podcast and you're enjoying this really quick, fast summer series, I need you to leave me a 5-star review and write something. Here's a review I got that says, such a great podcast. Gets right to the point and has all the answers. Easy steps and advice to follow. She allows the podcast listener to take their business to the next level if they use the steps given. Mary Valdez from the United States, thank you for such a great review. All right, guys, you're going to tune back in tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. We are going to continue the summer series. It's a whole bunch of short 10-minute podcasts, so you have no excuse on earth not to listen. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Truth is in the red letters. Ciao.